Hey there, thank you so much for joining me today. I've got headphones on here so I can monitor my vocal track here. So today I'm going to be talking about an approach that's been refined for me over a long period of time, but has taken hold the last month or so as I've been a lot busier working on projects, and I've been traveling as well. So recently I covered some of my tips and approach for working remotely with Dorico and Dorico on iPad, but I thought this was a natural extension, which is essentially how can you work with some kind of lightweight setup that you can sketch on and you can get your ideas out there, but that's good enough that you can really hear your ideas come to life. And then sort of secondarily, what's involved in gracefully migrating that to a real mock-up with, the pro libraries that we all have invested so much money in. So thank you very much, Shubhas, for being here. Thanks, Peter, so far for leaving in the comments. If there's anyone else out there, feel free to say hi in the comments. And if you have questions during the live stream, then please let me know and I will get to them. So I'm going to address four main topics here. First thing is a lightweight sketch. So what I like to do is use Iconica Sketch and or piano. I'll talk a little bit about that. There's switching ensembles, and how do you do that? How do you get from something like Iconica Sketch to the full-on Berlin series, for example, or VSL, or whatever high-end libraries you're using? And I do that with Playback Templates. I think Playback Templates are the best way to do that. And I'm going to go over that and talk about that process. Then there's some sort of caveats and considerations with regards to articulations, dynamics, things like that, where essentially if you have a lot of, let's say that you're going to be writing a piece that uses some more rare articulations. Let's say you're writing the whole thing in harmonics, or Bartok pizzicato that you only have in one library somewhere. Then you're going to have to kind of work around that. Maybe just sketch with pits, and then just kind of keep a mental note that you're going to switch that out for Bartok pits when you actually get to the mock-up stage. But generally, I do stay within the sort of basic staccato, legato. I rarely even stretch into marcato for my sketches, but I certainly use tremolo fairly often, accents, very basic things which are going to be true to both my sketch libraries like Iconica Sketch, and also true and will work translating well when I load up my high-end libraries. Then the last thing I want to talk about at the end of this video, which actually for me is a crucial part of this workflow, is using flows in Dorico. I think Dorico's flow sort of architecture is really key to my workflow and how it speeds up that transition, and how it speeds up the many stages in my workflow from sketching to orchestration to mockup, and ultimately quite often exporting audio files out and then bringing them into Cubase and doing yet another layer of hybrid composition. Because flows allow me to compartmentalize ideas. I also think that I did a video on this recently. I'll typically start with a flow that's just motifs, gestures, sketching very rough ideas. Then I might make a secondary flow of actual phrases, A and B sections. Then I'll make a flow of actual orchestrations where I flesh those ideas out. But when I migrate to my sort of high-end library, like for me that's Berlin, when I migrate to the Berlin series, it's really, really helpful for my workflow. It makes it very quick and speedy for me to go back and see what motivic ideas I was starting with, see what phrases I was starting with. Maybe I'd realize down the road that I need a variation. I need another variation on that theme. I need a B section. And it's very nice to leave my orchestration alone in a flow, go back to my phrase or my motive flows, and then from there, I can build out a B section, or I can build out a B phrase or another variation, things like that. Keep it very compartmentalized so that I'm not tripping over my shoelaces, so to speak. All right, so I'm going to walk through some of those, and if you have any questions, again, just leave comments in the chat, and I will certainly take a look at them. So let's switch over to my desktop. I apologize for those who might be watching who have been frustrated that sometimes I keep it in the little window. I just forget to switch, so I'm sorry about that. I'm going to make an effort to always keep on the desktop so that you guys can see what I'm up to. So I've got a general orchestration up here. This is just something that I had worked on relatively recently. You can see it's fairly long and obviously has kind of a natural build to it. String section, horn section, I've got some percussion in there at the end, not much in the way of winds. And so what I'll typically do is I will actually sketch this out with my Iconica Sketch library, which comes free with Dorico Pro. I think it basically replaced Halion Symphonic Orchestra, or HSO, but you could use HSO too, which by modern standards is a relatively lightweight library. The full Iconica, which is a big paid thing, I haven't worked with it enough to really judge, but the Berlin series covers me in all regards. So that's Berlin series is my high-end library, and then Iconica is my sketch library. So I'll actually have a playback template up here in the playback menu, or the play menu rather. You'll notice that all of these playback templates come basic. And if I'm not using Groove Agent, I'm not using any drums, if I'm not using choir, right, then I don't need the Olympus. So I'll just go with maybe Halion. Well, I want Iconica Sketch. I'll go there, and then I'll hit apply and close. This is the basic library that is going to load every time that I start a new project, and I'll show you in the settings how you can decide what library to use when you start your lightweight sketching. It also is the library that is used in the iPad version of Dorico, and if you have the paid version of Dorico, I went with the lifetime payment on that. Then you get more instruments, you get, or sorry, more members of your ensemble. You can load more instruments. Now up in the preferences menu, under general, I believe it is under play. Yes, here. You can select the default. Oops, see, there I go. I went again and forgot to put you guys on my main screen. So this is in the preferences, under play. There is an option here to choose which of the playback templates you want to load by default. And generally, I'll go with this library because it covers everything and it's much lighter weight. So it doesn't sound as good for sure. Let's listen to, let me see if it'll play back. May not be playing back through the routing on my live stream here. I'm getting signal. Let me see if I can bring up that mix. Here it is. Okay, so it's it's good enough for me to differentiate between brass and percussion. It's good enough for me to differentiate between a suspended cymbal and a tam-tam, but it's not good enough, or even close to good enough, for like a real serious Hollywood mock-up. So it's great for sketching, and it keeps my computer very lightweight. It's going to be very low RAM intensive, and it's going to have all of the basic articulations that you're going to need, pizzicato, that sort of thing. If we actually look at one of the libraries here, let's go ahead and load up this one and see what it looks like if I'm in trumpet. So, I've got the staccato, marcato, sustain, vibrato, and legato. So, it's not an exhaustive list by any means. And this feeds into that sort of these considerations or caveats that you want to consider when you are working on a lightweight sketch. If you are doing this approach, you probably need to keep limited to the articulations, because that's one of the things that, as you grow the number of articulations that are currently loaded, of course that grows the number of samples and the amount of the RAM footprint and all that. If I was writing a piece, like maybe I was writing a horror trailer and I knew I was going to be using harmonics all over the place, I might just forego this in the sketch phase and just go straight to my library that I know has those tracks in it. So there are some caveats and considerations, but keep an eye on whether or not your articulations, the sort of palette of articulations and instruments you need are sort of more esoteric or more refined. Okay. Let's talk about switching. So now once I've got this all set up here, I'm going to go to my playback template. Let's say I've gotten, actually before I go through that, I will just point out kind of down here, I would have a flow typically this would be my orchestration, and I would call it orchestration. I would have another flow that would probably be little motivic ideas, maybe, this 16th based sort of ostinato or sort of rhythmic engine here. In this orchestration, it's supporting other instruments, so there's not a whole lot in the way of motivic structure here. There's rhythmic motifs that I've got, so you can see some reused rhythmic motifs, especially in the brass. So these might be things that I would have in a motif flow, and then I would have actual whole phrases in a phrase flow so that I can keep them all broken up like that, okay? So when I want to switch, let's say I've gotten to the point where my orchestration is looking good, I'm very happy with it, I'm going to go to the playback template, and I'm going to switch out, and I'm going to go in for, in my case, this Maestro 5.1. This is my VSL, or not VSL, but Vienna Ensemble Pro setup that has Berlin and a variety of native instruments libraries. It has a number of layered things with synths and strings and horns and things like that that I use in my hybrid compositions. It's a huge, relatively speaking, RAM footprint, and it's going to put a lot more strain on my computer. It's not convenient if I'm on an airplane or in an airport, but it's where I'm going to start getting the best results, really nice sounding. So for example, in Berlin, the Berlin brass, you actually have 4 unique horns. So your horn section is not just the same horn sampled 4 times for a 4-horn section. It is actually 4 horn players with 4 unique horns. And it is tangible. You put that together on a horn section, and you really want it to sound triumphant and powerful, it's going to sound a lot better. But having 4 horns just in the sketch phase is completely over the top. So let's take a look here at some of the things you'll see in this composition from the standpoint of articulations and dynamics. Now I have these repeat dynamics quite often because I do a lot of copy and paste. I know that if I was giving this to an actual live player, I would strip those out. I don't think I really have from dramatic. I think I had like one roll. There you go. I've got a roll in here, probably on a suspended cymbal with a little bit of dynamics, but something essentially quite basic dynamics that I'm using, and those are supported very well in a lightweight sketch. Now, another thing that I'll commonly do if I'm not doing orchestral work, I'm just doing something melodic, or maybe I'm working on a media cue like the tension cue or dramedy or romance or something like that, a spooky cue. I'll work in piano, and I literally will just have a single piano staff, and in my motif flow, I will have the melodic ideas, some motivic ideas, maybe some chord structures, not just whole notes, but just conveying to me what the chord progression is. And then I'd have a phrase flow, as I said, a little more expansive, and then the orchestration where I would actually push those piano parts out into other instruments and vary some of the tone colors, things like that. But piano makes a really great lightweight sketch tool as well. So if you're not inherently working on an orchestral cue, then just go with a piano, and I think it'll make life a lot simpler for you. You can still go ahead and at a later time come down to your playback menu and make sure that you apply whatever playback menu you want, including higher end piano samples, right? So you could have, you're just using the Hallion basic piano for sketching on iPad Dorico, for example, but when you bring it in here, you load up your really nice piano, your favorite piano that's got many more velocity layers and that sort of thing. But I think I've found it very, very helpful to keeping my workflow fast and efficient. I load up the computer, I load up Dorico, I load up instruments, it's just ready to go. because it's not dealing with all this RAM footprint of high-end libraries. Okay, so I would just switch here, switch to my new one. So I'll go ahead and just demo that, and I switch out for the Berlin series, and that's all in VE Pro over here. And now when I load that up, I've got an entirely different, well, I guess maybe it got lost again. An entirely different sound, and it's going to sound a lot better. So the final thing that I just wanted to reiterate was about the speed of using flows. The degree to which your workflow with sketching to a mock-up can be accelerated depends on your ability to compartmentalize phases of the process. Mock-ups, where you are writing in automation curves, MIDI CC, CC7, CC11, CC1, maybe vibrato, breath controllers, things like that. If you did that during the compositional stage, honestly, it's a huge waste of time. It's completely necessary in the final mock-up, but you don't need to do that in sketching. So compartmentalizing what you're trying to do, I find it personally very helpful to start out with motifs and basic concepts, rhythmic concepts, maybe chord progressions, harmonic ideas. Then move to phrases, start seeing how they're all going to work out. How's this going to become a piece of music? Can I hum it? Can I whistle it? Is it catchy? Those sorts of things. How could I re-harmonize this 3 or 4 different ways, right? Then once I've got that, so much faster to be doing reharmonization when you're just dealing with a single piano track with a piano melody, for example, than it is if you've got an entire orchestra and you've got to reharmonize, everything playing harmony in your winds and brass and strings. So keeping these things compartmentalized is an important part of working from a sketch to a mock-up, making that process effective and fast, staying in the flow creatively, not getting hung up on the technical stuff. And Dorico is really well positioned for that because of these playback templates. You can have even going a step further than just lightweight to heavyweight sounds. You can dial your strings through CSS, dial your strings through Berlin, dial your strings through Spitfire, dial your strings through VSL. And through that process, you can hear, okay, yeah, some libraries are going to have better attacks, and I'm writing a trailer and it's really got a hit. Or some libraries have smoother attacks, and this is a romantic piece. It's going to sound better here or there. So you can use playback techniques in the mock-up stage where you're actually auditioning different libraries as well, which can be really, really effective. So if you have any questions on this, I see how Shubhas has said, how is it that the instruments line up correctly when switching between Iconica Sketch and VE Pro? In my experience, it's really about making sure that your playback template is properly created, and that means because a playback template is just a collection of endpoints, so it's crucial that your endpoints are configured correctly. Endpoints are generally going to be your instrument connections. Now, I think what's happening here is that let me see if I can. I don't generally like to make people sit through tedious troubleshooting, but it is this is the kind of thing Dorico users come up with all the time. So as I play back, I'm not actually getting any sound, and I realize that that's actually because I do not, I believe, have my libraries set up. So I'm looking at VE Pro right now and it's blank, right? So that's why there's no sound coming through VE Pro right now as I play this back. But if you've created, if you've got your instruments set up in endpoints correctly, and you've got those endpoints assembled into a playback template correctly, then switching between Iconica Sketch and my VE Pro collection is basically effortless. I would say that it usually takes about 20 to 40 seconds for my computer to load everything and switch it all over. That's if I have VE Pro running and I have it sort of pre-set up. My VE Pro setup, which is primarily the strings and brass and winds and percussion from Berlin, Generally, that does take about 1.5 to 2 minutes maybe to load full, and I load it at the beginning of my day, and then I get on with my day. So when I'm switching from Iconica Sketch to VE Pro, it doesn't actually load instruments. It just loads VE Pro instances and makes the connections, which is very quick. So if you set up a playback template of your own, where you're actually loading all the instruments into Dorico, like you've got endpoints that are set up, loading instances of contact, or something like that into VSL, into Dorico, then yeah, it's going to take a while. But in terms of how's it going to sound, are there going to be confusion there? Probably not. Probably not really. I can see that actually my instruments are set up here. So let me go ahead and reconnect to this. So I would hit apply. Sometimes I even watch over here, watch these things get populated, and then sorry, that was a little loud, but that's because I've got 4 horns there, right? So it sounds way better than the Iconica Sketch. Anyway, I hope that addresses it. This works with all orchestral instruments. It also works with, for example, I was writing for a while, I was writing some film music that was all Irish themed, and I was using this library of Irish instruments. And I was just doing all the sketching in piano, and like these really, really plain sounding, flutes and recorders and stuff that were built into General MIDI. And it didn't sound very good, but I could tell what was a wind instrument, what was a piano, that sort of thing. And when I switched it over to running the contact instruments that I had pre-configured as a playback template for Irish ensemble, it took a minute to load, and then it just worked like that. So I think it's very straightforward. I think you'd find it very approachable. I would recommend, if you're going to try this out for the very first time, make sure first that you've got a good endpoint, and that endpoint is built from an example where you've loaded in the right expression and or percussion maps, and that the instrument's loaded just as you like it. When you save the endpoint, then you save that endpoint to a playback template. And it's been my experience that it's very reliable. Now, I do have other videos on playback templates, setting them up, understanding endpoints. But if you have questions about that, that's always a hot topic with Dorico users, and I'm always happy to cover it again because I know that it's a big issue. So if questions come up around that, feel free, anybody watching this, to post in the comments after I'm done with the video, and I'll get back to you and maybe even make a video about it, okay? So I'm going to wrap it up right there. This has been already about as long as I like to go, and then I will be back again on Thursday in the morning Pacific time, and I will see you guys then. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for supporting my channel, and if you're new to the channel watching this after it's been live streamed, then please like and subscribe because it helps my videos reach a larger audience. And I hope everybody is having fun composing, has a great week, and I'll see you on Thursday. All right, bye for now.